Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dig into the different kinds of rules that shape our existence. We're talking everything from the laws of the cosmos that you just can't break, to the messy rules of our society, and finally, to the personal codes we write for ourselves. So let's just dive right in. We are surrounded by rules, right? But they're not all created equal. There's this hierarchy to them. And if you can understand that hierarchy, you can navigate the world so much better. The big question is, which rules are totally unbreakable? Which ones can be bent and which ones are really up to you to create? Some rules just feel fundamental, absolute. Like, as physicist Roger Penrose points out here, mathematical truths. They seem to exist completely outside of us, totally timeless and universal. It's less like we made them up, and more like we stumbled upon the actual blueprint for reality itself. And then you have the rules of society. This World Bank report, it shows how financial regulations, rules we invent to try and create some order, are unbelievably complex, and sometimes they backfire spectacularly. These aren't timeless truths at all. They're systems we build, and believe me, they can break. And then there's the third level, the personal one. Dr. Srivatsa here is talking about his own life's work, and he reveals this inner rule, right? A personal conviction that just drives every single one of his actions. This isn't a law of physics, it's not a government regulation, it's a code from deep within that can literally define a person's entire mission in life. Okay, so let's start at the most fundamental level. We're talking about the big ones, the seemingly unbreakable laws that govern the entire cosmos. But are they as absolute as they seem? As far as we can tell, the universe plays by a very fixed set of rules. For 13 billion years, core forces like gravity, the strong nuclear force, they haven't changed one bit. Not by any amount we can measure. These constants, they really do seem to be the bedrock of our reality. Penrose even describes space-time as having a rigid causal structure. The best way to think about it is like a fundamental grid for reality, where the laws of physics dictate what can possibly influence what. It's the ultimate rule of cause and effect, and it governs literally everything that happens in the universe. But, and this is a huge but, here's where it gets really interesting. Even these most basic, fundamental laws, they're up for debate. Physicists and philosophers are seriously asking, are these rules truly constant? Or is our understanding just a tiny snapshot in a much, much longer, evolving story of the universe? Okay, so from those vast, elegant laws of the cosmos, let's drop down a level. We're now in the far messier, way more chaotic world of the rules we invent for ourselves, the rules of society. I mean, just look at the 2008 financial crisis. It's a perfect case study. The World Bank found that this wasn't some act of nature. Nope, it was a complete failure of our own man-made rules. The system actually encouraged excessive risk-taking, and the regulations were so complicated that it made it almost impossible to hold anyone accountable. And what's really wild is the sheer mind-bending complexity we build into these things. I mean, look at this language. Tier 1 capital, Tier 2 capital, risk-weighted assets. This isn't the beautiful, simple math of the cosmos. This is a labyrinth, a maze that we built ourselves to try and control risk. And here is the direct, dangerous result of that complicated system. Our rules led to this, a huge concentration of assets in just a handful of banks. This created the infamous too-big-to-fail problem, which leads to what's called moral hazard, where risky behavior gets a safety net, threatening the whole economy. So we've seen one type of man-made rule, a technical maze that pretty much failed. But what about a totally different kind? Just contrast that financial complexity with the Hippocratic Oath. It's ancient, it's ethical, it's not about risk-weighted assets. It's about a simple, fundamental idea, human connection. But even this system is in crisis. Dr. Srivatsa argues that medicine, by creating its own maze of complicated protocols and prioritizing profits, is actually forgetting its most important rules. And this has led to terrifying things like deadly superbugs, doctors losing their diagnostic art, and health systems that are totally overloaded. His language here is just so striking. He calls the system clownish. He's arguing that these rigid, sometimes totally misleading protocols are replacing the most essential part of medicine, the actual art of listening to a patient's story, the human element. So, we've looked at cosmic laws and we've looked at man-made rules. But what about the rules that matter most to us, day in and day out? Let's turn inward, to the codes that we choose to live by. Okay, so one approach is completely pragmatic. Neuroscientist Rian Doris calls it the overload principle. This is basically a personal rule for massive growth. You intentionally take on a huge new responsibility in one area to literally force an upgrade in your brain's capacity. It's like a self-imposed law of extreme growth. Now, spiritual teacher Paul Ferrini, he offers a totally different framework. He makes this distinction between outer authority, the worldly laws we've been talking about, and inner authority. This inner authority is like a spiritual compass, something we surrender to, not because we have to, but because we want to unlock our own potential. Ferrini's law of equality offers this really profound personal rule. Just reject spiritual hierarchies. The core idea is that we're all equals, period. This isn't a law that's enforced by anybody but you. It's a conscious choice to see the world without all this specialness. Okay, so we're living inside these nested sets of rules, right? You've got the cosmic, the societal, and the personal. With all these conflicting demands, are we the masters of our own destiny, or are we just servants to these huge systems we can't really control? And this just gets right to the heart of it all. This comment, it perfectly captures the ultimate conflict, doesn't it? If every single atom in your brain follows the fixed laws of physics, then is our feeling of free will, our ability to write our own code, is it all just an illusion? Now, some stories take this idea of being controlled by outside rules to a, fantastical extreme. But honestly, we don't need to imagine secret reptilian overlords. The real conflict, the one we face every day, is between the societal rules we're told to follow and the personal code we feel we have to live by. So, what's the big takeaway from all of this? Real freedom, real agency. It doesn't come from trying to break the laws of physics. It comes from understanding the difference between these three levels, knowing which laws are absolute, which societal rules are flawed and totally negotiable, and which personal code you, and only you, must define for yourself. And that, right there, is the ultimate skill. Recognizing which game you're playing, which set of rules applies at any given moment, and then consciously choosing your own path within all of it. The universe has its laws. Society has its rules. So the final question is, what's your code?